The month of April started off slow, and if you've watched my past few videos, you know how I feel about the market coming up. But in today's video, I'm going to tell you why. The second half of the month once again surprised me, but I want to show you why that does not change my perspective. And I have two new metrics slash slides to show you, one toward the beginning and one towards the end. You definitely want to learn about the one towards the end. So stick around and let's get started. So mortgage rates stayed up about a half a point from where they were at the beginning of the month. Now, that is a very tenuous situation. I'm not going to go into more Fed talk on this one, but something we have to keep an eye on, and I anticipate that's going to fluctuate in between 7 and 7.5 for the foreseeable future. Now, inventory increased over the month of April, up about 4%. You're going to see here on the next slide why that is not normal, but normally we see in April a decrease, not an increase. So that is sign number one that I think we have some trouble coming. Days on market still very stable, single family. Those days on market actually decreased pretty good. Prices are still very strong. So for condos, they're still up about 8%, and single family homes, they were down 3% from the previous year. If you remember the last few of these, it was down much more. So everything is shaking out as expected. It's coming back to a pretty stable market, even in that capacity. Now, here we go with new slide number one. So I thought this would be helpful to not only show you what happened compared to the last month, but also the same month last year. So mortgage rates, as they change, you may be thinking, and I know I've had people ask for this, can you show me how things are changing as mortgage rates change? It's a little hard to cram everything in a chart, right, where you can see it month over month. It's just too many different data points. But here we can see compared to last year, we were at 6.25. We then are up to 6.625 as of last month, and we're up again just above 7 this month. So it kind of makes sense that inventory may have increased along those same lines, as you can see on the second row there. Now, total inventory, we're up 4% compared to last month and 8% compared to April of last year. So again, just kind of explaining through this so that you will understand what I'm talking about here going forward without the details each time. One other metric that I wanted to start tracking for you guys, because whether it's sellers or buyers, this is a part of the offer creation strategy. Now, it's a case-by-case basis. Every house is different, but looking at these sale to list price. So basically, what did it sell for divided by what did it list for, right? And if it's sold for over asking, you're going to get a percent over 100. We're not in that world anymore, but we were at one point. So you can see here that compared to last year, we're actually much stronger in both the condo and single family market. We're up several percentage points. I asked myself when I pulled these metrics, now, why the heck would that be the case, right? If things have slowed down, right? If demand has slowed down, months of inventory have gone up, why is that the case? Now, what I believe we are seeing here, and I have no way to prove this, but I believe we're seeing last year, there were substantially more well overpriced homes compared to now. We still have homes that are overpriced and substantially overpriced and selling for a good bit under versus where we are now. It's really hard to say, but these numbers aren't lying. There is not a ton of room, even though there is some room. And again, even compared to last month, those percentages are up. So we had a very strong April. And again, this is a 1 month drop in the bucket snapshot. So I'm not reading a ton into any 1 month metric. You should know that by now, hopefully. So that is an interesting fact, and it does play into some of the charts that we're going to see here. For new listings, we actually had more new listings than we had in March for the first time since 2019, when we had the same amount of new listings. So said a different way, this is the first April where we've seen an increase compared to the previous month. That is alarm bell number two from where I sit. That is breaking a trend that has been substantial for the last 5 years. So that's something to certainly keep an eye on. Now, again, April's the first time that has happened. That hasn't happened in the last 3 months, right? January, February, March, everything stayed as we expected. This appears to be breaking a trend. We'll see what happens in May if that duplicates again. The amount that went under contract actually reduced by about 9% compared to what we saw last year. Now, line that up with new listings, where we saw about 10% fewer new listings, and it's not something that I suppose should be terribly surprising. But again, I asked myself once I pulled these numbers, wait a second, we had fewer new listings, we had fewer go under contract, but by about the same amount, but somehow we had inventory increase about 10%. That seems off. What that tells me is we have a ton of homes or a substantial amount of homes that are just sitting there. They're stale inventory, more than we've had in the past. That's why inventory is building. So, said again a different way, the more new listings that we've had come on, they've been generally somewhat more reasonably priced. They've sold versus what we have out there that has been out there for the better part of 6+ months. They're still sitting. They're people who don't really need to sell. They're not motivated. That's the result and the cause, I should say, of inventory increasing. Closed sales, very weak April compared to previous months. Again, this is a lagging indicator. It's not something I read too much into, but still an interesting thing to note. Now, months of inventory for single family, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We're above 6 months of inventory for the first time in a while. Despite that, we have seen our highest median sale price on record in this month of April, over 2 million, it's 2.2 million and change. Broke the previous high of about 2.1 a little over a year and a half ago. So we had a very strong month. And what that tells me is that the high end of the market, there's still a good amount of activity there. And that is moving faster than the rest. That's going to pull your median sale price up. And that does ring true, right? If you're thinking about things from an economic standpoint, from a how does it feel, right, to go to the grocery store standpoint, who's going to be impacted? And through all of that, who's still buying multi-million-dollar homes? It's going to be people who can afford it, who it's not going to hurt them. They're still able to go forward with their plans and live their life. And they're not as impacted by the things that a lot of people are impacted by. So again, all of this does make sense to me that that high end is really holding the market where it is right now compared to what we're seeing at the lower or average price points here, which are still very high. Days on market, again, we've seen a pretty significant drop over the past couple months. We shouldn't expect that to continue. I think we'll level out there. Months of inventory for condos, we are approaching 5 months again for the first time in a bit. 2 consecutive months of increased months of inventory means that things have slowed down. Again, I created a new metric that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes to try to prove that and go a little bit deeper to understand what it really means. But something that has really surprised me that this has slowed down. The condo market is usually the faster of the two. We're kind of seeing things change there. Now, median sale price is stable, right? We're going to see on this chart 2 months of decreases. And if I wanted to be an alarmist, I'm going to say 2 months of decreased median sale price for the first time in the last 5 to 6 to 7 years. But I'm not going to say that because, again, I believe that this is stable. What we really had was a blip in February of a very high month, and we're plateauing here, which is not a bad thing. Days on market still very stable there. Now, we have a new metric, and I'm just going to call it speed because I'm a simple person. This kind of resembles what is called absorption, but that metric never really made a whole lot of sense to me. It was hard to explain to people, and it was hard to digest, understand what it really is trying to measure. So speed is going to be very simple, and it's going to be the amount of new listings that hit the market in a given month divided by the amount of homes that went under contract in that same month. We're not relying on past data points and all kinds of different measurements. This is very simple. How many homes hit versus how many went under contract. So it's a ratio. This here, again, going to repeat what I just said a couple minutes ago, not going to read into any 1 month metric because it's not stable. That can vary greatly based off of 1, 2, 3 deals that go, high, low, fast, slow, whatever it may be. So what we see here is roughly on average, we're between 1.75 and 2 homes that need to list for every home that goes under contract in a month. If we're looking at this through 2019. And there's a pretty faint trend line here that you can maybe see in the back that is drifting upwards. And those trend lines in a graph, to keep it simple, help you see, hey, in general, are we increasing or are we decreasing? Over the past 5 years, we are increasing. What that really means is that we are seeing homes move slower. By the time one goes under contract, we've now had almost 2 hit the market, whereas some of these months back in 2020, 2021, we're all the way down at or even below 1 home, meaning basically for every 1 home that hits the market, 1 sells in a given month, which is pretty crazy. So this 1 month, I'm not, again, going to read too much into here. We're basically pinballing, if you look at the orange columns, every other year between a fast year and a slow year. But on average, it's not that scary. We're about staying pace with where we've been the last few months. Now, a different way to look at this is on longer terms. Again, not 1 month at a time, but just like I track everything else with the rolling averages, we're going to do a 6-month rolling average and a 12-month rolling average. And why I'm choosing those, number one, the year, the 12 months is a pretty standard metric. The 6 months, to me, it gives us more than enough time for homes to cycle through, considering we're between 50 and 75 days on market. Plenty of time for those homes to hit and sell. So we are going to have a pretty stable way to look at this. The first chart here on the left is the same time period, the last 5 years since I started tracking all this at the beginning of 2019. The second is going to be a shortened version, a 2-year window. Because what I don't want to have happen is we only look at this big five ever extending period of time and make assumptions based off of those trend lines or anything like that. I want to be able to zoom in a little bit, not too much to the point where we're losing sight of the bigger picture, but enough to see if, hey, over the past 2 years, have the trends changed? So again, in that first chart, we see the trend line shifting up, starting from, close to 1.5, 1, all the way up towards 2. What we really want to focus on here is a couple things. So when we started this before COVID, on average, we were looking at about 1.5 homes per home sold. So that then swung down through COVID, right? We see that drop, and then we see a spike in 2021 when mortgage rates started to creep back up a little bit, and then they dipped again. But the big thing that we want to focus on is that huge spike that really started in about May or June of 2022. If you were around and paying attention to the housing market, that's when mortgage rates really started to be hiked by the Federal Reserve. We've been on this cycle for a very long time. But that May period was kind of the last hurrah for those very low mortgage rates in the 3% range. They started to spike. So what we see in both the 6th and the 12-month, the 6-month is spiking faster. That's the one that's basically telling us, hey, something's changing and it's changing in a hurry. There are fewer homes going under contract, or we're seeing a ton more new listings, which wasn't the case. So those are the two talking points that we're going to really explore when we're talking about this new stat. Speed. Is a change in speed the result of we had more new listings come, or is it we had demand pick up and more homes went under contract? Those are our 2 points of focus. So then we see things come back down. And since 2022, things have actually gotten much friendlier. Things have moved much faster. And that's what we're seeing in that chart on the right. That trend line is fairly stable. It is slightly increasing, but over the past year specifically, after we start to see that 6-month dip come back down, it's actually slightly decreasing. And it's pretty darn stable, right around, again, that 1.75 point. And what did I start with this conversation? Back in 2019, pre-COVID, we were at about 1.5 on average. And we're up at about 1.75. That's not a substantial difference. So this is something that I'm going to keep a huge eye on in the Facebook group. If you're not a member of it, you definitely want to check it out. Linked down in the description. I'm going to be talking about this more often than you're going to hear it on the videos. It's going to be snapshots and looking at this in different ways to start to try to get ahead of things. What do we think is coming, right? When are these trends starting to break? How do we find them? How do we diagnose them? So this is where I'm really going to get to nerd out, but I'm going to keep it simple for you guys. Again, this stat speed, if that ratio, if that number is going higher, that means the market has slowed down. And why that is, again, is either due to the amount of homes going under contract or the amount of new listings. We track those both very closely. We'll be able to explain it very simply for you. So I hope you enjoy that stat. I know that opened some eyes for me and a couple other people that I shared it with. But where are we going? Based off of those last charts, based off of what I said at the beginning, right? We had a strong April. It doesn't really change my vision of where we're going to be for the next 3 to 4 months. So mortgage rates, they're up. I expect them to stay where they are. As far as demand goes, I see what happened in the last half of April as more or less the last hurrah. These were people that decided we are going to get here for the summer. We're going to be here for Memorial Day. We're getting under contract, come hell or high water. We're going to pick a home that works for us now. If it's not the one forever, so be it. We'll figure it out in a few years. That's the normal Ocean City mindset, which in a normal market is totally fine. That mindset is a little bit risky, in my opinion, given that we don't know what's coming. We are seeing inventory increasing. Expect mortgage rates to increase. We have an election coming up that may shake things up. We have the NAR settlement that is going to change how the real estate market functions as we know it. So I think that's the last hurrah as far as seeing strong demand goes. So inventory I expect to continue to climb, which again was not normal for April to see an increase the way that we did. I think we'll still see it inch up a little bit more. I'm not expecting us to hit 300 in the month of May, but I think we'll end up in the 270 to 275 range, roundabout, if all trends continue the direction that they're going. And prices I expect to stay the same. And I'm going to skip the rest of this just to get to my advice to you. That's what I've been sharing the most with clients of mine, and I'm happy to share some of those nuggets with you that I can. Others I have to keep for those who I am working with. Right or wrong, my advice to most buyers that I have talked to recently has been very clear. Unless you see something that you have to have, that is the perfect fit, you should consider waiting until the fall when I believe there will be more values to be had. We don't know what those values are going to look like, right? Are they going to be the properties that fit what you need? We can't say for sure. But what I can tell you is historically, that's when the best deals have been made, in November and December. With that said, from a buying standpoint, normally we see prices go up quickly and come down slowly. So I would encourage you to start the conversation with an agent, whether it's myself or somebody else, sooner than later, because a lot of these homes that end up being sold for what I would say is a reasonable or good price, all of that information is not shown in the list price. It's usually something that happens during negotiations or after the fact. So don't sit around and wait for that perfect home to finally hit the market at a price you're comfortable with. If there's one that's out there, or if you know what you want, you just haven't seen it yet, we can help you find that. So definitely reach out if you're looking to buy, whether now or in the fall. It's best to get educated not only on what we expect to happen in the market, but how to find the good deals, and also to talk through again what's going to happen with this NAR settlement, how it's going to impact you so that you're ready to move quickly when the right home becomes available. If you are looking to sell, I would encourage you to get a little more aggressive on price to really stand out. What we've seen over the past couple weeks, past couple months even, the homes that are selling quickest are the ones that are priced reasonably. Not even, I'm going to say underpriced, but just priced well. So almost all of the best values that I've identified during different things, whether it's talking with a client or just in my own head, almost all of them have sold and sold quickly. There's one that I was going to have somebody come down for that turned out to have multiple offers despite what I would consider a fairly risky proposition in terms of a closing date in the fall. But that hasn't stopped multiple people from going after it because it's a unique property. So again, speed still matters. It always matters. I don't want to sit here and give you false information or false hopes that, you know what, things are going to go back to the way they were, where you can take your time, right? You can take a couple weeks to watch a property, not really sweat it about coming down to check it out. I truly believe those days are gone. You can blame it on technology, you can blame it on COVID, blame it on whatever you want, but people generally know what they want. And I believe if people are educated and aware of what the process is going to be like, that empowers them and gives them the confidence to strike when the opportunity presents itself versus trying to sift through and answer those questions and what ifs after the fact. You're probably going to be too late by the time you make up your mind. And I've seen that with a couple people, unfortunately over the years, education needs to come first. And as much as self-education definitely, works and it's a good place to get started, speaking with a professional such as myself will help you get across that finish line sooner and get you to your goal, which for most people is making memories with their family here in their favorite place, Ocean City, New Jersey. So that's it for today. Thanks as always for hanging out. If you haven't done it already, make sure you hit subscribe down below. Any questions you have, please don't hesitate to reach out or drop them in the comments. I'll see you next time.